So, Christine, I'll open it up with you. The FBI has been extremely busy over the past 12, 18 months, especially when it comes to indictments and motions against Russian hackers, Chinese hackers, North Korean hackers, and that has been a deterrent strategy for a while now. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that strategy. How have you seen it grown, and what does the future lie?
So I think you've seen an increase in our abilities to indict individuals because of the relationships that we have with DHS and the information sharing across the community as well as with the private sector. When we build those trusted relationships, we're able to easier make a case, and the more outreach that we do as an agency and with our partners, it is the understanding of what we need to even make an indictment against somebody, right, and what evidence is needed to go that way. And it's been hugely impactful for us. We have one of the individuals we just actually extradited out of Georgia last month, Andre Torini. He was against financial institutions. He was committing hacks against financial institutions in a stock manipulation scheme. And that one, when we charged him and we went to Georgia and said, hey, we want to indict him back, they were going to extradite him back, but then the Russians said they charged him and actually asked to extradite him back to Russia. And that was in December of 2017. And it took all this time for us to work diplomatically, again, with another partner to get him back here, to actually have him face the charges against US-based companies. So huge successes there. And it is one of the tools in the toolbox, as we call it, to do indictments. And we have others that we use as well, and other methods and technologies that we use to try to stop the threat.
So, John, obviously before they're arrested, you have to deal with what they do and the day-to-day basis. So how do you deal with these threats as they come online and they are attacking, whether it's public sector infrastructure or private sector infrastructure? How do you deal with that on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so as Christine mentioned, there is a regular dialogue between the NCIC and DHS and the NCIC and FBI and the intelligence community to understand what the threats are, to keep up with what's going on. And so that really critical information sharing back and forth allows us to have some visibility into what the bad actors are doing, and to help prepare our partners, both the private critical infrastructure and the federal government with methodology for mitigation, and sometimes, depending on the level of classification, awareness of, we think this is going to happen now, you should do that. So that partnership is really critical, and it's not just law enforcement and DHS, it's also the intelligence community, and our private sector partners are a critical element in that. We have some stuff going on with a couple of the big multinationals where they see a different picture of the world than we do, and there's a back and forth between us to share what they're seeing as well.
So let's talk about that information sharing. How has that dialogue improved between DHS and the FBI when it comes to threats and how things are moving? Because I know it wasn't always that way. So how has that improved?
I think it's improved significantly. There is, and we talk about this all the time, there's this dichotomy, dynamic tension, if you will, between DHS, our mission, which is mitigation, stop the bleeding, and the law enforcement mission, which is put somebody in jail. But we have improved, particularly over the last year, the dialogue, so that there's an understanding on both sides what we have to do, and we've been pretty good in cooperating, and whether it's going to be a takedown like Christine is talking about, whether it's going to be a large mitigation effort.
Yeah, I think when the administration passed the lines of effort of who's responsible for what, that was a clear roadmap of how to proceed forward. I think a lot of the rub between was who's in charge, who's working this half, who's working that half, and that communication had to happen. And what you would see is, because that communication had to happen, because there wasn't clear lines, when you got there, you're wasting time getting through that when there's an incident going on instead of just dealing with the incident at hand. And I think that is where we've come and developed over the last year and the years prior in learning from all those, is that we're able to react a lot quicker because we're working so closely together, even on joint products coming out that you'll see, joint intel products on the threat, what the threat is. When that's coming out, that is how we both see it. It's worked together jointly, so you get the whole 360 of the threat that we're seeing. So it's hugely impactful now that we're working jointly together more often.
Yeah, and I should point out as well that once you get outside the Beltway, there's an incident going on. The folks that are on the ground doing the actual incident response, we don't have any of this back and forth. It's just like, let's get it done. So that ground level tactical cooperation is really, really good.
That's great.
Yeah, so our 56 field offices have the cyber, threat task forces. They were mirrored after our joint terrorism task forces. And so when someone shows up, it's not as if they're just wearing, one saying DHS, one saying FBI. They're just a team going in. And so it's really when we're responding to the incident, it's seamless.
So John, you hit on this a little bit. How have private cybersecurity companies helped in the information sharing department as well as in support and tracking down these threats?
Yeah, so not necessarily just the private cybersecurity companies. We consciously chose to use some of them as our partners in this pilot effort that we're doing, but we looked more for a broader view of the world. So one of the players in this effort is an energy company, worldwide, multinational. One of them is a financial company. A couple of them are IT and cybersecurity companies. So the evolution of that pilot, and then all the stuff that happens day to day underneath that, has been rapidly improving. We just had a discussion with Bill Nelson backstage, and we're both back and forth in the financial sector with information sharing on a regular basis. So that's a long answer to say we think it's going pretty well. There's still improvement to be made, but it's a conscious effort that we work at every day.
Christine, what about with the FBI?
Yeah, I think it's significant that we have great relationships with all companies. Same statement. I think what the cybersecurity private companies have done is you've highlighted the threat more and more to executives in companies that before just thought it was an afterthought, right? You got hacked and then we dealt with it. Now it's more proactive, right? So when you're sitting down and you're talking about development efforts, or when you're going to the cloud, the questions are being asked at the executive level of what is the security. And that is a huge cultural shift for companies, right? And the fact that the security professionals are sitting at the table at the beginning of those discussions instead of something being developed and then you bring them in and look at the security on the tail end of it, and then everything has to be reworked or not at all, nothing's done with it. That is really beneficial for the work we do. Listen, for all of you, work us out of a job, right? That's the goal here, right? To work us out of a job and doing what we do every day. And the more that you can push on the security front end of that and to keep having those discussions, and then the trends and patterns that we're parsing out, or the trends and patterns that the private industry is seeing that you can send back to us so that we can work through that and figure out where those are coming, it gives us more and more to combat the threat as a team together, as a holistic team of players doing it.
So how has information sharing improved from the companies that are dealing with these threats? What more would you like to see from companies that are reaching out to both DHS and the FBI when they have a problem?
So some companies are really good, others not so much. We would prefer to know about an incident once, and realize this: just because something's happening in your network doesn't mean you really know everything that's going on. So once you get a sense, oh yeah, we've been hacked, and there's an event going on, at that point, it's probably useful to share. Because what we can do is we can connect the dots between other incidents that are similar to that and help you make sense of it more rapidly. So the answer is sooner rather than 6 weeks down the road, which is useful in the long term, but it's not useful in terms of immediate mitigation.
Christine, I imagine that you probably agree.
I absolutely agree. I think for us, it's the companies locally need to make relationships with our FBI field offices. And we don't want to meet the companies the first time we're walking through the door when there's an incident. We want to have that relationship already established. And part of that, too, is the post-incident response. Because if we do want to do an indictment, or we do want to work even with our foreign partners, if it's coming from overseas, to work on their doing a prosecution and arrest, there's certain things we need. And you need to know what those are before we're walking in the door, and maybe some log files got deleted on the way to get the system back up and running that maybe you could have saved, right, to stop the threat. And also the threat sharing and the information sharing. If you know our local field offices, that flows a lot better. And so you can protect yourselves more.
Christine made a really good point, Greg. it doesn't do us any good to share business cards in the middle of a disaster. You got to get to know us before that happens so that we can establish those relationships. And it's great to have a relationship with me or with Christine or with Christine's boss or my boss. What we really want to foster is an analyst-to-analyst level discussion so that the folks actually have hands on keyboard. They're seeing the stuff that are rolling by in log files and things like that. Those folks can have a chat and really get into it deeply and quickly.
Great. John, Christine, thank you for your insights. Really, really appreciate you diving into this.
Thank you for your time.